Good morning, good afternoon, LinkedIn fans. I know you guys haven't seen in a while, LinkedIn, Facebook, you haven't seen in a while. I'm recuperating from that great conference we had, the Military Sexual Trauma Conference. I tell you, it was great, it was outstanding. I learned a lot, but it's emotionally draining. And I want to just do before I start though, I want to give you a quick glimpse of how we started the show, and then it's time for our countdown. So let me give you a quick glimpse on how we started the show. Tell me what you thought. Think.
When you face the world alone, no one reaches out a hand for you to hold. You can find love if you search within yourself, and the emptiness you felt will disappear. Then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on, and you cast your fears aside, and you know you can survive. So when you feel like hope is gone, look inside you and be strong, and you finally see the truth. That a hero lies in you, yes, that a hero lies in you, that a hero lies in
So that particular song is specifically dedicated to the military sexual assault survivors. There are warriors, and there's a hero inside of all of them, and that's what we wanted to kick off this update on what we happened with our military sexual trauma conference. But before I do that, I always got to go to my intro. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Tony Williams. I'm the president and CEO for Veterans Council of Veterans, and this is one I know you haven't seen for a minute because I was decompressing from that very emotional military sexual trauma conference on the 9th and 10th of June. Then also Father's Day, I went to make sure I came out and see my dad. Actually, we're actually recording for remote. See my dad for Father's Day. He's a veteran also, staying in the VA. So, but I'm back and I got some stuff to tell you guys and get in, but not just you'll see pieces of it. How did the conference go? How did the conference go? The conference was great. It was great, and I really decided, and we already put it in our board last year about standing up. I think we really need to be more active. Veterans Council of Veterans will be more active when it comes to military sexual assault survivors and their families, mainly on the mental health side. But we're going to definitely be ensuring that there is support and advocacy, excuse me, for military sexual trauma survivors and their families. I'm going to do a quick rundown of the panels we had. Then I'm going to go over our special broadcast for today. Because one of the panels we had here, we had Dwayne Kimball. If you know him, he's on YouTube. KMD. He's a benefit expert. He was in the Army, retired from the VA benefits. They talked about the benefits that you're entitled to being a sexual trauma survivor. We also had here we had the survivors of military sexual trauma, Michelle, Jennifer, and Logan. They were great. But we also had something a little different. We also had the male survivors. People don't talk much about the male survivors, but they're out there. They may be smaller percentage, but they're much bigger in numbers. And we, Veterans Council Veterans, we want to make sure that they had a voice, and we're going to continue to make sure they have a voice moving forward when it comes to military sexual assault survivors and their families. Kevin was there. We've seen Kevin from last year, our first one. Tyler was actually leading the team. He led the whole operation from soup to boats. And then, of course, Chef Anthony, and he had his family out there as well. We also said MST and the families. We talk so much about the survivor, about the MST survivor, but we don't talk about the families and how it interacts with family. We had a great panel. We had from Dr. Kimberly Kinsler, Michelle, Jennifer, and Dr. Sarah Nicholas. We all talked about how it affected the families, relationships, decision making. We got to do more about that, and that's one of the things we're going to advocate differently for VCV, Veterans Council of Veterans, is making sure there are support and services for the families as well. If not, it becomes generational trauma that was caused by the military. I'll tell you something else we had that's unique in our conference. We had MST and minority veterans. Yes, because each, just like the males, they all have a different voice and a different story. We want to make sure that the voices were heard. So with that, we had Dr. Cameron Kinsley, Army veteran, Dr. Carlos Garcia, Marine veteran, Lisa Carrington Firma, she was there, and of course, Michelle, talking about how the sexual assault affected them as far as their culture, to see what the differences are. And trust me, since we're different cultures, it's different from when you're claiming you've been sexually assaulted all the way to when you go to your claims. And you'll hear more about that moving on as we talk about it. That's something you'll only see in Veterans Council and Veterans. And finally, definitely want to thank our guest speaker, La Coronella, Colonel Lisa Carrington Furman, author of books. She had two things for the conference. She went through excerpts of her book, and we also had a healing workshop book. So wow, that was really it was an exciting 2 days. I want to thank the behind the scene you don't see. We have definitely my wife. She was definitely part of that, and making sure everybody was getting fed and everything was organized. That was important. A lot of volunteers. I hope I forget them. But we had Janine Terrell, Tony Gross, Alta Wilson, Logan Ingle, even though she was also part of the panel. We had a lot, and we had Aman, who did the pictures. Wait for the pictures to come out pretty soon. You see all the pictures and videos. And Cody Palmer, who did our sound. So those are guys from behind the scenes that I want you to know about it. But you'll hear more about that as time comes on. But what we're really here to see and talk about is this. This, on a second day, we did something different, technology-wise. I have seen so many comments on LinkedIn when it comes to people who are actually trying to survive being sexually assaulted while they're in the military. I said, wow, because generally speaking, most of our stuff we deal with veterans, but I felt it was important to start addressing survivors who are currently in the military right now, be it active duty, reserve, National Guard, and they're different. And so to do that, I had the virtual in, because both of these speakers were in Virginia and different places. So it was so important that I broadcast them in. We had a virtual. First is Denise Rucker, Coast Guard, Yale grad. Really was a staunch advocate when it comes to sexual assault. And then we also saw Dr. John Cordle, you can call him the disruptor, a retired 06 from the Navy. We brought him the command perspective. And I tell you, it was a very interesting, thought-provoking, and just brought some people out. We had a lot of questions and answers. And I'll share those questions and answers later on. What I'm doing is this is a 3-part, because I think it was just too long to sit and do one, on a session. So I broke them out to 3 parts, about 15 minutes each. And the first will just be an introduction. And let's get to it. I want to introduce to this slide Dr. John Cordle and Denise Rucker.
Cordle, and I am a retired Navy captain. I had 2 command tours on a destroyer and a cruiser, and retired in 2013. And can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Well, on the back end.
You retired in 2013.
Try again.
Yep, retired in 2013, and then came back to the Navy in 2020 after going out and getting a degree in human factors, looking at fatigue and stress for the Navy sailors. After we had some collisions in the Pacific that took the lives of 17 sailors, and we set up a program to look at what's causing stress amongst the force and make sure we feed that back to leadership. And so it wasn't exactly in my job description to look at sexual assault, but one of the things I realized is it really doesn't matter why someone puts you in a position of stress, whether it's discrimination for race, gender, sexual assault, bullying. The end effect is you're a less effective sailor. It affects you mentally, it affects you physically, it affects your ability to do your job. And so I had actually met Denise through a totally different venue as we looked at the name changes for bases and ships based on their connection to the Confederacy. And she has a great story there. But her real forte is advocating for sexual assault victims through Congress and things like that, in the public forums like this. And so we developed a friendship and then a collaboration, and we put two articles out that, if you get a chance to read them, great. They center around a report that we're going to talk about today that the DOD put together called Hard Truths, which talks about sexual assault and sexual harassment in DOD and the somewhat startling trends that we've seen over the past couple of years. So that's my story, and then we met through LinkedIn, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Right, thank you. And I think you sent me the link. Do I have the link already for the article?
If you don't, I'll send it to you as soon as we're done.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And now, to no further ado, Denise Rucker, CAPT, you already saw that Lisa said, she said aye.
All right, you guys,
Oh, yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I think it's John's mic. Yeah, you sound great, Lisa. And Denise.
Okay.
Hear you.
All right, then I will. All right, I'll talk. So, hi. I think I might be the only Coast Guard on the call today. So I was Coast Guard JAG. Started in the late 90s, so that's how I came into the military. But if you look at my maiden name, I come from an Army family. So spent some time as JAG, then helped create a little agency called TSA, went to the Hill, and then became a chief counsel at the Maritime Administration. And I was responsible for one of the 5 federal service schools. Back in the summer of 2011, I had been made aware of sexual assaults that were occurring at the school, and they were at sea and at the school. I asked for an IG investigation, and I was forced to resign. I was a political appointee at chief counsel, and I was forced to resign after reporting sexual assault. So found a job as a lobbyist, and then, the next summer, I think, is when Senator Gillibrand started holding those hearings, and I was blown away by the panel of all of these individuals, including the JAGs, getting up in Congress and saying, "Not a problem, everything's okay." And I said, no, that's not the truth, because, well, I had been dealing with it. So I reached out to her office and said, "What can I do to help?" And then I started writing, and I wrote an essay called "Female Military Personnel Aren't Whores." And that got me an invitation to testify twice before a congressional panel in January 2014. And where I said, again, the same thing. There is a problem with sexual assault in the military, and these are the things we need to do to stop this. And I tied it to trust and morale, and specifically said, if we do not stop this now, we will have a morale issue. We will have a trust issue. And lo and behold, in 2023, we have that. So was doing some stuff on my own, then met John Cordle, and he said, "Hey, Denise, let's partner up. We each are going to come at this from 2 different areas. Let's see what we can do." And we started writing. And then, so I just want to give a shout out to John for saying, "Well, let's do this." So we've been writing a couple articles. We got a couple more in the hopper. And our goal today is just to talk to folks and share our experience and encourage people to become advocates, if you aren't already are, for sexual assault victims. So, and by the way, I'm just going to say this now: my cat may photobomb us, or my children who are just waking up. So if it happens, I apologize now. So over to you.
I appreciate it. Can't wait for you. What's the cat's name?
Mackie.
Yeah, so if everybody see Maggie, get back and shout.
Got it. Thanks.
So one of the reasons why, and then you can kind of, because there's been so many things, discussions about sexual assault. I was telling the audience here, it's increasing. I just saw that the academies, like a 69% increase in sexual assault in the academy and reporting. Can you, you're talking to somebody who's in the military who's been sexually assaulted. Can you give us some steps you should take if you have been sexually assaulted? Either one of you can take that. What now?
We can hear you, John.
John, you're mute.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. Let me defer to Denise to give the first answer, and I'll talk about it from a command perspective.
Well, my first response is report it. Report it, report it, report it. And I say that because if you do not report it, the individual who has sexually assaulted you will continue to do it, and the crimes will continue. And what we were finding, and I say this 12 years ago, and I say this today, is people were afraid to report it. So I understand there might be concerns, but if you do not report it, it will not be resolved. So that's my first response. Report it.
Okay.
And not the commander.
Denise, I have a question. As a commanding officer, what I recall is there's 2 types of report. There's a restricted report and an unrestricted report. And the challenge with an unrestricted report, as I understand it, is that it's with a restricted report is it doesn't necessarily get publicized, and it may or may not be prosecuted or addressed. The problem I've seen with a restricted report, I said it wrong, with an unrestricted report is, and again, I have a small sample set, but certainly from the victims that I've talked to over the past year since we've collaborated, it's almost 100% that there has been some form of retaliation that they've had to deal with, if not direct, then indirect, or at least the stigma of everything from just being isolated within the command, sent to another command, or somehow either your reputation suffers because someone thinks that you were part of the problem, or people circle around the assailant because he or she is your supervisor, senior to you, has a great reputation otherwise. And so back to your question, what do you do? Absolutely. I say report it. If someone robbed me of my wallet walking down the street, I would go to the police and report it. What I've been struggling with lately, and this is the first time I've kind of said this in a more public forum, is I'm not sure to whom I should report it. If it occurs out in town, I'm almost inclined to say report it, call 911 and report it to the police.
Oh, absolutely.
Rather than reporting it, rather than wait till the next day and then go back to the ship or go back to your command and report it. The people who tell me that they've done so immediately met with a bunch of questions and disbelief, and had to get over a mountain of that before they could really make a report. And then as a commanding officer, I will tell you, I had very little training on what to do when someone reported to me. And I struggled with that. And I had 4 sexual assaults, 2 per command tour. Half of them were same gender, just for what that's worth. And half of them were supervisor to subordinate, and the other 2 were peer to peer. And I struggled with what's the right answer. In a couple cases, I don't think I did the right thing as far as keeping the rights of the victim covered, while still trying to protect the rights of the accused, right?
So let me clarify when I said report. I meant report to the local police, not report to your boss. Report to your boss, yes, that has happened. But you're right, if it's out on town, you call the police. And you do that because you've got to get a rape kit. You have to get the evidence. And the faster you get the evidence, the more active and accurate that evidence is. So if you wait for a day, you wait for 2 days, the evidence decreases. I'm very sad to say that, but it does. So as soon as that incident occurs, you have got to report it to the police. You call the police, or you go straight to the hospital. You just have to do that. You ask for a rape kit. You ask for everything. The other thing you need to do when you report, bring somebody in there with you. Because when you are going through that incident yourself, you are not going to be able to document. And you need somebody there to document what is going on, who you have talked to immediately after that. So if you can do that yourself, that would be great. But don't do that alone. If you can, bring somebody else in there with you to the hospital, because the hospital will document, but you will also want to document. You will want to know who you've talked to, what you have said. And then after you do that, you talk to your command, you talk to your boss. But your command does not capture the evidence. Local police and the MPs capture the evidence.
Yeah, that's a really big thing. But, you know, as most of us who've been in the military, when we do a medical, we're in the military, we go to the base hospital. Basically, I want to do, they have a rape kit, or do you have to go to the police to get it, something like that?
Well, the hospitals should have the rape kits. And if they don't have the rape kits, the first thing we should be going back to is all those base commanders and saying, why don't you have rape kits? I mean, that'd be a really interesting question, to go to the base hospital and say, how many rape kits do you have? How many have you processed each year? Where are they? But the CEO of that base should have all that information at the tip of his or her fingertips.
That's a great question, Denise. I'm not sure that I would be so sure that the answer is what we hope it would be, but I think that's a great follow-up question to maybe go dig into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate it. That's something I'm definitely going to, we start looking at policies. Those are things you should start. If it's not there, it should be mandated, whatever. It shouldn't be like, oh, if you got time, have a rate. Okay. And I'll give you some anecdotal, and you guys can comment. I was a commander at Fort Hood, had like the largest company in the military. One of the challenges that somebody is like your bud or something. So if I'm a commander, and guess who's going to cover me first? My first son. Set the stage. Hey, sir, you're going to hear this with this person, and don't believe that thing. So we need to have a good conversation with the leadership when it comes to that. No, because everybody, when they think about it, think of somebody they don't know, and say, yeah. But what do you think about that? Having somehow we got to make sure we got the first sergeant, the first line supervisor. We got to let them know that you're my first sergeant, but you're not my buddy. Right? Do you see that problem, John, as far as being a commander?
Absolutely. One of the cases that I mentioned, without getting into too much detail, was a supervisor who was actually known as one of the key mentors of some of the junior sailors on the ship. And it turned out that this individual was using that positional authority to earn trust, and then abusing it and abusing them. And because one didn't report it, he was able to do it for not just on my command, but it turned out on other commands that he'd been at. And at the time, I think it's changed now, there was no cross-complaint tracking from command to command. So if someone showed up at a new command, the records would be sealed from the old command if they were accused and not convicted. And Denise can talk about convictions versus accusations and what that looks like. But yeah, very often it's someone, one of the folks that has spoken out, and it's going to be in our next article. It was a very senior officer on the ship, and the command circled around the officer, and that person is still out there.
Yes, Denise, can you talk about what John mentioned about the conviction versus the
Yeah. Well, so what John's describing also is going on in the Coast Guard. So it wasn't just Navy. It's not just Coast Guard, not Army, not Air Force. It's happening everywhere. So yeah, that's happening. Okay, let's break it down. And I'm going to talk as a former chief counsel. Okay. Your job as a chief counsel is to protect the service. It's not to protect the victim. It's to protect the service. And that's something that I learned personally, because a few minutes ago we were talking about retaliation. So when I reported the sexual assault and I asked for an IG investigation, it was viewed as me attacking the entity that I was sworn to protect. And I share that very bluntly because that is still the mindset, is you are protecting the service. But go back to what I also shared. If we don't solve this, then the service is weakened. And so
Right.
when we go to, again, the other part of the conversation where you say, hey, you know, is your senior NCO, or is he or she helping you? Are they your bud? Are they really helping? Yeah, you know what? You may be the most senior NCO. You may be part of the chain of command. But if you are part of the problem, then you are hurting the service. And so we got to kind of change how we view what we are protecting. So we've got to do that. And then we also have to change how we view the reporting itself. I've been in the sexual assault community for 30 years. It's not a place I wanted to be in. It was somebody else did this, and I got put into this. So when I was asked to address sexual assault, I knew what I needed to do. Whereas John and others who haven't been part of this community and weren't forced into it, their first time they address it, they don't know what stuff is out there. You just don't. You don't go into command and say, here, you know, here's the encyclopedia of what you need for sexual assault, because nobody was trained like that. So that's part of the goal I have of today, is saying, let's talk about what our commanding officers need and how do we get that into their training book as they train to be the 04, the 05, the 06, or the E7, the E8, and the E9. We got to start there and then get them ready so that when the incident happens, you know what to do.
Right.
So there you had it. You just got a real quick snapshot, 15 minutes of the kind of conversation we had. And let me set the stage for you, for those just tuning in, looking what's going on. We Veterans Council Veterans did a second annual military sexual trauma conference in St. Pete. And because I saw that sexual assault was still going on through LinkedIn and stuff, I thought it was important to have a panel talk about this. And so what you saw on that panel, it was like 3 parts. We had the audience the people who attended the conference. They were there in the background you saw, and I was MCing, and then we had Denise and we had John. And John, I mean, these guys, I tell you, John just lost his mother, and he still took the time to stream in to us. And then, of course, Denise as well. So that's what you saw there. And it was some points that we need to talk about, not here specifically, but we need to talk about moving forward about how we're addressing it. Is it properly resourced? Are the services properly resourced when it comes to military sexual assault? And those kind of questions. But there's more questions than that. You'll see it next Monday. So we're gonna each Monday we're gonna have a part 2 and part 3. We're gonna have some more discussions about military sexual assault while you're in the military and what you could do to help protect yourself and protect your rights. You already saw in the panel about it's better, and it's just kind of sad to report it to the police too, because that's where it's on the record. It's not. It may not ever get to the records, and we have some other discussions there. So that's something. One of the takeaways is that reporting, not just reporting to your chain of command, which you should do, but also report it to the police as well. And there's been some increases to sell. So there's some things I'm talking about. So somebody may ask me, why are you doing this, Tony? Why is this important? Well, I'll tell you why. One reason why it's important. Okay, I just put up a link on 3 ladies, soldiers who died by suicide. I think last Thursday or Friday. And if you look at that screen right there, you'll see that I've got almost 4,000 responses for my regular. I got over 2,000 responses, almost 4,000, almost 3,000 from the Student Veterans of America. People are interested, but we're just not talking about it. But I'm going to talk about it. Okay, as long as I'm sitting there, part of Veterans Council of Veterans, we're going to talk about it. And we're going to be more involved to give you more information on what you should do if you've been sexually assaulted. There's a 3 parts. There's a prevention, intervention, and postvention. So there's a prevention side, which is on the DOD side, not on the VA side. The intervention side is also on the DOD side, not on the VA side. Then the prevention, then the postvention, which is what we deal on the veteran side. We're going to talk about that. We're going to bring some guests on from our conference, so you can hear what their experience and some takeaways. So anyway, I know I'm sorry if it took 30 minutes of your time for after lunch, but I just thought it was important that we start out with this. This is what I thought was important. And again, every week we're going to have some more parts of what we just saw about the empowerment, as well as we'll talk about some of the things that are going on at the conference. So it's been 30 minutes. Sorry about, I like to do it 15 minutes, but I thought it was important we talk and go over time. Please let me know if you think this is a good idea. DM me whenever. I saw a couple of responses from different areas of the country. So this is Tony Williams from Veterans Council of Veterans, and I got to do my outro. And I'll see you next week, next Monday, 1 o'clock, to part 2 of John and Denise's commentary. Thank you then.